everyone, welcome to ProWritingAid 101 for business writers. I'm Michelle Adams, ProWritingAid Social Engagement Manager, and I'm here today with Micah McGuire, our B2B Digital Marketing Manager. So for this session's agenda, we're going to walk through some of the most important features and reports for business writers. And this includes our real-time checker and goals sidebar, the summary report, the readability report, the style report, and the sticky sentences report. And if we have time, we'll go over some other tools outside of our reports that our business writers find to be useful, like our style guide. But ultimately, we'd really like this to be driven by what you'd like to know. So we're going to leave the last 5 or 10 minutes open for Q&A, and throughout the demonstration, you're welcome to drop your questions directly into the Q&A box for us, and we'll do our best to answer them as soon as we can. And as you can see, the chat is there as well, and that is for you all to interact with each other. If you have any specific questions, just be sure to use the Q&A box. And if you don't get your question answered, or if you have an account-specific question, we do encourage you to email hello@prowritingaid.com, and we'll get back to you on this as soon as possible. And you can just put in the subject line that you were part of today's 101 session. So with that being said, Micah, I think we have everything covered, so over to you.
Okay. Hey everyone, it is great to see you all here today. So I am covering our walkthrough today. It may be a little bit different than the walkthroughs that Tom usually does, but we're going to go ahead and dive straight in. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, guys, and everybody, let me know if you can see that okay. I recently changed computers and have been having a little bit of a problem with the screen sharing not always working, so I want to make sure everyone can see that. If you can, just throw in the chat that you can, and we'll go ahead and I'll start chatting about our web editor. So today, I'm actually going to begin in our web editor, simply because the web editor is going to be the main user experience that you will get essentially across all of our integrations. So we do try to keep the look and feel of the product the same across our integrations, and the web editor is kind of the base product. So whenever you go into our Word integration, whenever you're using one of our browser extensions, it will all look very similar in those cases. So you can see here we have a row of all of our reports, and don't get too worried about those because we're going to go through some of the most important ones, because usually for our business writers, there's only going to be between about 3 and 7 reports that you'll be running regularly. So not to worry, it's not as if you're going to need to run all 20 plus reports on every single piece of writing that you do. But I am actually going to draw your attention to the settings tab up here in the upper center. And here we have some very important preferences that you can set. First of all, we do have a preference for the dialect of English you would like to use. We support UK English, US English, Australian, and Canadian. And so you can set any of those and it will make distinctions between those dialects. So say if you set it to British English and you spell color C-O-L-O-R, it will direct you to spell it with the UK spelling, which is C-O-L-O-U-R, I believe. Vice versa for American English. If you happen to select General English, that is going to accept all comers, so it is not going to make a differentiation based on the specific dialect of English. In this case, I am going to select United States English. And then for our next setting, we have the document type. And you can see here, I actually already have this set to a general email. And actually, I'm going to pop this over to a general business document because I do want you guys to see some of the differences between these document types. We'll be diving into this more when we get to the goals toolbar. So coming back to our actual document, I am going to go ahead and start by turning on the real-time checker. So you can see here the real-time checker is off. We don't have any suggested corrections at the moment. And if I turn that on, my entire document starts to light up with all different colors and corrections I can make. And you can see on this left-hand side of the screen that I have the goals sidebar here, and then I also have the improvement sidebar under this tab. So to quickly walk you through the first kind of workflow we recommend for people is using this real-time checker and using the improvement sidebar and the goals sidebar. And that's because it's a very simple point and click kind of affair. So you can see here, I can just hover over any one of these words that is incorrect. So here I have an unknown word, I have a misspelling, and all I have to do to accept that correction is click anywhere within this teal box. So I can click here, and there we go, it's corrected. If I go to the next underlined suggestion, then you can see I have a possible missing determiner. Again, I could click anywhere in this teal box, but if I wanted to go ahead and just advance to the next suggestion, then I can click this downward facing arrow to the right-hand side of the box. And when I do that, it's going to auto advance me to the next suggestion. Now, that is great for short documents. You can kind of hover over, and that's going to be the workflow that you'll usually see with the Chrome extension that we'll be going over our browser extensions towards the end of the session if we have time. But this kind of hover and click is going to be the very simplest workflow that you can use with, say, your browser extensions, all of that great stuff. Now, you also can use the improvements sidebar as well. So let's say you have a longer document or you have a lot of suggestions in the document and you're feeling a little overwhelmed. You can come over to this sidebar and you can see here, if I scroll, I have all of these different suggestions that I can take a look at. Now, the great thing about this is that this improvement sidebar has a filter. So if you see this little funnel tool up in the right-hand corner of the sidebar, if I click that, I have options to do spelling, grammar, style, and that last one is passive voice. So I can uncheck my passive voice, I can uncheck style, I can uncheck grammar. Let's say I just want to look at my spelling mistakes. That's now been reflected in the editor in the real-time checker over here, and it's also reflected under the improvement sidebar. So that can be a big help in reducing the amount of overwhelm you may experience while using the tools, because it helps you filter things out. So I can look at just spelling and grammar, I can look at spelling, grammar, and style, and I can select all or select none. So in this case, I'm going to turn everything back on. And now we're going to move to the goals sidebar. And you can see here with the goal sidebar, I have all of these different metrics that are both gold and green. So in this case, if you look at these bars, this gray bubble on each bar indicates the level that that goal needs to be at. So this is kind of your target area for any one given goal. For this goal of grammar, spelling, and style, we suggest between 80% or higher. And you can see here that because that is out of my target range here, it is gold. So that means that is an area that I need to work on a little bit. Here, I have style guide compliance. I am well within my style guide compliance goal here. So you can see that's in green. So green means that you're in great shape. Get that gold or orange means you might need to work on that area just a bit. Now, the great thing about the goals sidebar is that you can actually have it change based on your document type. And this is why I switched over from a general email to a general business document, is I do want to show you guys just a little bit about what changes whenever this happens. So you can see here, I have a few different things that have popped up in general business, but if I come up here to this document type selector and I instead change this to a general email, then I am going to get some different types of goals. And you can see actually my goal percentage in this upper right side of this tab is actually changed. So you can see I've still got business jargon, I've still got my readability, but then I have this positivity sentiment. So this is something that will take and score how positive you are in a document. I have term-based issues. I cover a little bit more on the glue index. So all of these things are going to change depending on the type of document you're using. So that's why we do suggest, if you're writing a specific document type, definitely take a look at this business section, take a look at these different documents and select that document type, because it will give you specialized recommendations based on what you're writing. Now, like I said, this kind of workflow can be great if you are working on a shorter document or a document that doesn't have a lot of editing to be done on it, because I can look through and go through all of these changes on the real-time checker, implement those, and then come back to my goals and see, hey, what's in line? Where would I might maybe need to work a little bit more? But let's say you have a really long document, or you have a document that you need to do some serious editing on. In those cases, the real-time checker, all of this kind of hover, click, might get a little bit too much. It might be a little bit overwhelming. So what we suggest in those cases is to run the summary report. And the reason for this is twofold. So a couple of different reasons is, first of all, the summary report is going to give you an overview of your entire document. So you can see here at the top, I have your key scores, and this is going to be the same no matter what. So grammar, style, and spelling are always going to be the most important scores in any one given document, because they're really kind of black or white, correct or incorrect changes that need to be made. So if my grammar is off, chances are I might have a grammar mistake. If my spelling is off, unless I have, say, a technical term that the program doesn't know, I probably need to look at making corrections so I don't have a silly typo somewhere. Same goes for style, making that document a little bit more readable. So that's why these key scores are always placed at the top. If I scroll down, I then have a section of where my document looks good. So you can see here, it is the same layout as our goals sidebar with that target area, and then being within range is green. Now, this is always good for a bit of an ego boost, or it is good to see where you might be on the top end of a score. So you can see here, readability, I'm kind of on the top end of that score. Weak adverbs, again, I'm on the top end of my target area. So those, if I'm looking to really get a document perfectly polished, might be areas I might want to come back to towards the end of my editing process. But the more important points are going to come further down, which is where your document might need work. Again, you can see I'm in that orange gold color, which means I'm out of my target area. I have some business jargon in there. I have some issues with my positivity. I have some issues with my glue index that we are going to be getting into that report in just a bit. And if I wanted to say, see more about any of these reports, let's say I'm not sure what a glue index is. I can click on any one of these names, and it will take me further down the report. And you can see here in the sidebar, you can also navigate via this sidebar to any point. And it will say, okay, here's an explanation of what the sticky sentence check does. There are certain reports that have graphics associated with them, and that includes, say, the readability report. So I can see here I have a graphic that shows me a breakdown of my document by paragraph. Here's all of my easy to read paragraphs. Here are some slightly difficult to read paragraphs, and here are some very difficult to read paragraphs. So again, that's a sign that I had mentioned earlier that I'm at the top end of my target range. That graphic to me tells me that there might be some work I can do in this report that can help me out. I would not suggest having to go through this entire summary report and scrolling all the way through, because as you can see here, it can get very, very long. So you would be spending a lot of time on the document. So my primary suggestion is come to the top of the report, check out where your document may need work. If you feel like you need an extra explanation of any one of the given reports that show up, let's say maybe you have a report that you've not used before that pops up in this area, you can definitely take a look and see it there. We recommend that this summary report is almost like a set of training wheels for using the program, because what will eventually happen is as you use more and more documents within the program, you will become kind of accustomed to what reports are you running regularly. So for me, I know in any one given document I write, I always need to double check my readability report. I always need to double check my sentence length and make sure it's actually long enough in a lot of cases, because I tend to use a lot of shorter sentences. I know that I sometimes need to check my sticky sentences report. So those will usually be anytime I run a document through ProWritingAid, I'll run those 3 reports, and then it goes without saying I'll run the grammar and the spelling report, just again, like I said, because those are the most important reports out there, simply because it prevents embarrassing typos or embarrassing grammar mistakes. So what we're going to do from here is we're actually going to go on to the readability report, just so you guys can kind of see, because the readability report is very much interconnected with the style report and the sticky sentences report. So we go to the readability report first. You can see here my left-hand sidebar has changed slightly. So I have that congratulations, this document is easy to read. And then if I expand that, I have 4 different reading scores. So here I have Flesh Reading Ease, which is what you will usually see whenever you're hovering over a paragraph in the readability report. And then I have this Flesh Kincaid grade, and this is the same grade that was seen in the goal sidebar and in the summary report. And what this refers to is this is what grade level of reading is your document at. And we typically recommend between a 6th to a 10th grade level of readability. And this is not to say that whenever you're writing something that you're intending to write for a bunch of middle schoolers. It's simply because in the analysis that we've done of easy to read, readable writing, that's just where the grade level has a tendency to fall, is within that 6th to 10th grade level. And that means that pretty much anyone can pick that up and understand it without too much effort. Now, you can see here on that sidebar that if I come down, I have one very difficult to read paragraph. And if I pop here, it will show me that paragraph. Now, readability from the Flesh Reading E score is graded on 2 points. It is graded on the number of syllables per word, and it is also the length of your sentences as well. And this is kind of at a paragraph level and at a sentence level. So you can see here, if I just look through this paragraph, the first thing I'm going to be thinking about when I'm trying to improve this readability is, how could I maybe make this a little bit simpler? Could I break this up into 2 paragraphs? Could I maybe simplify some of the vocabulary? So the one that's catching my eye here is acting as the intermediary. I might change that to acting as the go-between instead. And say go-between for the development and engineering team. And so those are kind of the surface level changes that you can make if you're trying to improve the readability of a paragraph. Unfortunately, we are not to the point that we can rewrite entire paragraphs for you. We hope that maybe one day we'll be to that point. But for now, if you are trying to increase your readability, look at the top end, can I divide this paragraph up into 2 paragraphs, because that will make it more readable? Can I shorten my sentences? And then finally, are there any words that I can reduce to a more simple term that might have less syllables? So, and that's kind of your first step. But let's say you're looking at a paragraph and you've tried all of that and just kind of doing it manually is not working. That's where our style and our sticky sentences reports come in. So if you can see here, if I go to my style report, I have 15 readability enhancements that have been found. So if you just click through those, it's usually things that can just be removed and enhance the readability. So if I go ahead and remove some of these, come through this way. And then let's say I look back at the readability. Let's take out this quite. Then you can see here, it will also catch things like passive voice as well. So here that's been corrected by our system. If I run the readability report again, we're not quite out of that difficult to read category, but we are up a little bit in that reading ease score. So the great thing about the style report is the style report is not necessarily a right or wrong, correct or incorrect report. So ultimately, all of the suggestions given here are down to you as a writer as to whether or not you want to accept them. So maybe I click through some of these readability enhancements and I say, I actually want to keep some of these words in. I don't have to delete those things. It's simply suggested as it might increase your readability. There might be cases where passive voice is found, and actually it's worth keeping that in because I have a specific reason around passive voice. And one of the great ways to find that out is, let's take a look here. So I have a passive sentence right here. And let's say I want to find out more about the passive voice. If I click this little golden eye in the upper right-hand corner of the suggestion spots, it's going to open up a little bit of a tutorial on what the passive voice is, all of that great stuff. So I can kind of scroll through and I can understand, why is the passive voice a problem in a lot of cases? Are there cases that I can use passive voice, that it's legitimate? And if you really want to go into a deep dive, you can always come down here and read the full article. Some of these, like the passive voice section, do have multimedia. So here we have Jackie Chan explaining the passive voice in our video here. You can go to the full article and read all about cases where passive voice is actually appropriate. So that will help you ultimately become a better writer, because you'll be able to look at something and say, okay, this is a case where I need to actually take that out, or this is a case that I need to leave it in, because you do have some scenarios where that passive voice is useful. The same goes for hidden verbs, in the other styles improvements suggested. We do have some suggestions around adverbs. You have repeated sentence starts, long subordinate clauses. I can look here and find out anywhere that I'm having long subordinate clauses that might need some trimming down. And ultimately, if I work through this style report, again, like I said, it's totally up to you as a writer, because these are not right or wrong. This is just what works best for you as a writer, and what's working best with your writing voice. Everyone is going to have different suggestions that they accept and different suggestions that they ignore, which reminds me, I forgot to tell you guys how you might ignore this. So if I wanted to ignore this passive verb, you can see down here, I have disable rule and I have ignore. So if I click ignore, that's going to totally get rid of that passive voice point, and it's going to say, I don't need to bother them about this passive sentence any longer, and it's going to come off of everything that you see within your goals checker, your summary report, all of that. We highly suggest using that ignore button. If you use disable rule, that is going to disable the rule across every single document and every single one of your integrations. So that would mean if I click disable rule here, I'm never going to see another passive voice suggestion again. That can be changed, but it does take contacting our support team, and that's just a lot of extra friction for you guys to deal with. So I highly suggest don't use disable rule, use that ignore button. And if you happen to run into a suggestion that is just outright incorrect, definitely hit that report incorrect button for us, because that helps us train the AI better and helps us reduce false positives. So anytime that you are running into a incorrect suggestion, anything like that, we would love it if you could hit that report incorrect button, because that will help us improve the product for you. So in this case, I'm just going to hit ignore and show you guys how that works. And you can see here, again, if I rerun that style report, then I don't have that passive voice suggestion popping up again. Now, related to this style report is that sticky sentences report. And the sticky sentences report is going to center around what we call glue words. So glue words are probably the most 200 or about most common words in the English language that help stick sentences together. So let's take a look at this very sticky sentence up here. Just wanted to circle back about the project we talked about around the last month. So there are words in this sentence that are the working words. So the project we talked about might be some working words that helps you make sense of the sentence. But if we said, project we talked last month, that's caveman talk, right? All that you can see is these glue words in that sentence help make extra sense and keep us from reverting back into kind of that caveman talk, because it's usually a lot of articles, prepositions, all of the things. Like I said, it may not change the meaning of the sentence, but it helps the sentence make sense. So if I take a look at this sentence, then I actually have that 10 out of these 15 words are glue words, and I have a few different suggestions on rewriting that sentence. Well, let's say maybe I don't like any of those suggestions. I can also look at this and say, okay, how could I reduce those number of glue words? And oftentimes, if you take a look, there will be a list of the glue words here. So you can see on this slightly sticky sentence, we set our threshold at 60% being a very sticky sentence, and I believe 40 to 60% being a semi-sticky sentence. And you can see here, I've got all of those glue words are listed there. In the scenarios that you do not have a rewriting suggestion, it will revert to showing you what glue words are present. So let's say I had my list of glue words here. I just happen to know this from previous cases that we've done this, that in rewriting this, I would rewrite it as, wanted to discuss the project we talked about last month. And we'll see if I have a less sticky sentence. There we go. I now have a non-sticky sentence in that sentence's place. And again, with sticky sentences, this is down totally to your writing style. If you give 100 different writers the same sticky sentence, you will invariably get 100 different ways of rewriting it. We are basically making those suggestions on where you can improve and making some of those auto-generated rewriting suggestions. So hopefully that will catch up in time and give you more and more options as time goes on. But if you run into these cases where you do need to do it manually, just look at the glue words and think, okay, well, how could I cut some of those out of the sentence? And oftentimes it's easiest to think, what am I really trying to say in this sentence? So in this, it's everyone is on board with the plan and we believe your company is the right vendor to carry out these efforts. What I'm really trying to say there is that we're on board with the plan and we think you're the guys for the job. So I might find a more refined way of rewriting that, but if I've got that general topic in mind, hopefully I'll be able to rewrite the sentence in a way that, again, I get it down to a non-sticky sentence ultimately. So those are kind of the most useful reports for a lot of our business writers. We do have our business writers also using the overused words report. And you'll see here we have overused versus all repeats versus echoes. And the overused words report is actually going to cover words that generally all writers overuse. So this is not something that you have personally overused in a document. It's just certain words. It's like, well, a lot you'll see this in fiction often, the word that gets overused in some cases. So it's just a check to say, hey, this is a common trap that most writers can fall into. Are there ways that you can reduce the number of times you use this word? So in this case, have, I might look through and edit some of these sentences to take that have out of the way. Now, we also have the all repeats that is going to show you repetitions within your document. So if overused reports is kind of comparing your document to the wider world, then repeats is going to be checking your document against itself. So you can see here, I've got frequent one-word phrases that may or may not help me. I mean, there may be some words like data. If I've used data 4 or 5 times in a single email, that might be a sign I need to go back in and correct it. Fortunately, I've only kept it to 2 in this email. But in a lot of cases, those single word phrases are not going to be as helpful unless, like I said, it's something that's kind of a rarer word. The 2-word phrases and 3-word phrases are probably going to be a lot more helpful because what these identify is our crutch phrasings. And this is just from being a writer, we tend to write how we speak. And all of us have kind of pet phrases that we fall back upon when we're talking and things like that. And that usually carries over to our writing. You can see, it might be a bit is overused here. I have 4 instances of a bit. That would be a crutch phrase that perhaps I need to go back in and edit a few of those out. So that's really where those 2 and 3 frequent word phrases help you out, is because it does identify those crutches and you can clean up your writing immensely just by taking at least, 1 or 2 of them out. It will help your reader understand your document better, and it will help your writing look stronger. So I think we are all right on time for me to go into a couple of other features that are outside of our reports. So in this case, I am going to actually pop over to our style guide in our term base very quickly. So our style guide that you can see here, I have navigated to basically being in the document sidebar. I'm going to bring up how we can open this. So if we pop back to the primary menu, if I go to that home button, then that is available here on this menu. All I would do is click on the style guide, and I am here in my style guide base. So the style guide gives you the ability to set up custom rules that the system will then check for. If your company has a style guide of its own that you guys have worked on and worked out different rules for different phrasings, words that should be used, words that shouldn't be used, then this is a great way to implement it. This can run from the very simple. So here you can see I have, if I click here, I have a suggestion for ProWritingAid Business versus ProWritingAid for Business. I have an instance that I would say, what is the wrong sentence? So I'm going to type that out. What do I need to be matching in that incorrect sentence? So that would be ProWritingAid for Business. What should actually be replaced with on that match? So in this case, I would replace it with ProWritingAid Business itself. And then finally, I can add a little bit of message to say, why am I making this suggestion? So in this case, use ProWritingAid Business because it's shorter. I can test that rule. It says, okay. And then let's go ahead and test that out in the RealTime Checker. I'm going to give that a little space. Come back to our RealTime Checker. You can see here, that's my suggestion. So if I click here, it will automatically update that to ProWritingAid Business instead. Now, that's kind of a simple find and replacement check. You can get very, very complicated with these rules. As you can see here, we have a rule here that I have actually taken from one of Tom's databases that regards changing good or bad reagents to appropriate or inappropriate. And you can see there's some coding that goes along here. So we're going to dive into this. That here I have a wrong sentence. So therefore, again, I just have good reagents because I know that I'm going to be trying to match good reagents. Here I have a match, and you can see I have these parentheses. So what's happening here is within the parentheses, I have two options for matching. I can either say match to good reagents or match to bad reagents. So that way, if I have a sentence that says a variety of bad reagents, this replacement will still be triggered. Now, the replacement starts to get into a little bit of complicated slightly more complicated coding that is known as tokenization and parts of speech tags. So here, what's happening is anyone who knows anything, if you happen to know anything about coding, computers have a tendency to count from 0 rather than starting from 1. So what's happening here is with that match, this is going to be $0. So that good is would be tokenized as a $0, and then this $1 is referring to keep that reagents in the sentence. So if I were to tokenize this phrase, it would be $0, $1. In this case, what I'm telling the program to do is carry down this reagents in the replacement. So it instead replaces with appropriate reagents or inappropriate reagents. This @ sign is going to indicate that this is going to be a suggest this or this. So in this case, I'm going to say appropriate reagents or inappropriate reagents. And then finally, I can include my message about appropriate versus inappropriate, deciding, why would we prefer you to use this as a rule? Again, I go through and test the rule. If I save that, I can then pop up here. And give the RealTime Checker just a moment. And there we go. There's my suggestion with the suggestion for either appropriate reagents or inappropriate reagents. In this case, because I've said bad reagents, I would select inappropriate reagents. So that's kind of a very, very fast view of how to do some more complicated style guide components. We actually do have a guide that's both our Style Guide 101 that's for these kind of simple changes like this, and we have a more advanced style guide article that is on the more advanced changes like this. It's going to cover tokenizations, parts of speech tags, all of that good stuff, and we'll be putting those into the chat towards the end of the session so you guys can take a look, and those will give you a little bit of a primer on how to use these rules. Now, I think we have a little bit of time left, so I am actually going to pop over to the Chrome extension just to give you guys a quick view of how the Chrome extension works, all of that great stuff. So you can see how in different formats, all the different formats that you'll likely see are integrations with. So we have multiple integrations, including a desktop app, a integration for Word, both on Mac and on Windows. And we have browser extensions for Safari, Firefox, Chrome, and Microsoft Edge. So almost every browser on the market, save for some of the very smaller ones like Opera or some of the discontinued browsers like Microsoft Explorer. So you can see here, I am in my Gmail account at the moment, and I'm just typing up an email. This is that same email from earlier minus any of the corrections that I made because I just copied the incorrect copy over here. So you can see I've still got all of these incorrect changes like this believe. It would need to be changed again, all of that great stuff if I was going to get that back up to par with where we were at in the web editor. Now, again, this comes back to the point and click functionality of the RealTime Checker. I can go through and edit the entire document just by point and click. If I want a little bit more detail on the document, I can come down here to the lower right-hand corner, and you can see that golden 22. If I click there, that is going to open up my web editor, and that is going to show me basically the same functionality that was in my web editor earlier. And if I make any changes here, let's say I'm going to correct diligently, and I am going to correct transformation and potential, and then I am just going to exit out of the web editor. And you can see here that again, the RealTime Checker is running, and all of those changes I just made on transformation, potential, all of those have been saved to this document. So there's kind of two levels to this. You can always work through it on the real-time level, or you can work through it in the more thorough web editor style that we have down here in the lower right-hand corner. All right, well, Michelle, I think we are getting close to time. We are going to try to get you guys out in 45 minutes. So do we have any questions on the Q&A end?
See here. We do have one question. The user asks, I'm dealing with some secure documents. How secure will they be while using ProWritingAid?
Yes, the security question. So this is always a great one because nobody wants their writing to be subject to another set of prying eyes. Basically, our servers are totally secure. We use Microsoft Azure, so all of those are United States-based servers that are done for any of the analysis, but by design, we have no data persistence. So what happens anytime you are using one of our integrations is the document is going to be sent to our servers to be checked. It's going to be checked, it's going to be sent back to you. There's no persistence on that side. Nothing is saved to our servers when using the integrations. The only time that is not the case is when you are using the web editor. So I'm going to take just really quickly and pop over to the documents sidebar, or our documents navigator. So you can see here, if I share my screen, that documents list, all of these documents are saved, and in order for you guys to be able to access that repeatedly, we do have to save that somewhere, so all of these documents would have some data persistence. If your company is dealing with exceptionally secure documents, let's say we have this happen a lot in the finance sector, we have this happen a lot in, cybersecurity stuff, things like that. We do have on-premise deployment options, which would mean that basically your company has its own version of ProWritingAid running on your own servers, that it never leaves the premises. All of the checking and stuff would be done on your own servers, and there would be nothing that leaves your premises at any point. So for those of you that are hyper concerned about security because of your industry, we do highly suggest looking into that on-premise deployment. You'll probably be best served by going to our ProWritingAid for Teams page and clicking on Book a Demo, because that is more of an enterprise option rather than just one that's self-service.
And our last question, does ProWritingAid replace having a pair of human eyes to look over my document?
This is the one I also love. Basically, the ultimate answer is no, and that is because humans and machines are good at different things. So machines are great at pattern recognition. They're great at finding the things like repeats that our eyes may skip over when we're reading. So if you go to the overused words report, or you go to the all repeats report, you may suddenly see a bunch of words that you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I used that phrase or used that word as many times as the AI is telling me I did. So that's the great thing about machines and AI, is that they're great at identifying those patterns that we have a tendency to miss, because our brains have a tendency to just say, oh, we can just ignore that. It's not important. On the other hand, however, machines are terrible at things like logic and flow and consistency. So if you're writing out a really, really long report and you need to make sure that it's flowing whenever you're transitioning from section to section, that's something that our AI can help with to a certain extent. It will point out, hey, you're lacking transitions here. But it's not going to necessarily be able to help you a ton on how exactly to get those transitions written, or it's not going to help with the logic of your overall flow. If you have a 4-part report and you might need to swap parts 3 and 2, put 3 in 2's place and 2 in 3's place so the logic flows better, then it's not going to be able to tell you that. So that is why we do say that we are not a replacement for a set of human eyes. We always suggest doing some manual editing yourself, or if you are lucky enough to have an editor, you're in an industry that has editors or proofreaders, we do always suggest having those on hand if you can, just because, again, the human eye is going to catch things the machine can't, and the machine is going to catch things the human eye can't.
All right, that's all we had.
All right, so really, really quick Q&A today. If we have anything else while I am grabbing our links, let me know. But I am going to go ahead and grab our links for everyone to take a look at, say, our style guide, rules, and all of that great stuff. So I'm going to post those in the chat now. So we have our guide to simple style guide rules, advanced style guide rules, the snippets tool, which unfortunately we weren't able to go over today, but that guide to snippets will get you up and running with our snippets tool very, very quickly. If you're looking for that team sign up page, like I said, you're looking for maybe something like an on-premise deployment, something like that, you can visit that link. And then we, of course, have our email newsletter sign up as well, so that you can get all the information on all the events we have going on. We actually have another business writing workshop coming up next month that we'll be getting details about soon in our newsletter. So if you want to sign up for that, just keep an eye on your inbox. All right, so I think that wraps us for today.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We will have the replay up on our YouTube channel within 24 hours if you missed anything or if you want to watch it again. And don't forget, if you have any other questions, you can always email hello@ProWritingAid.com, and we're always happy to help you.
I just realized we had one of our watchers say that I did not post that to everyone. I posted it just to panelists. Apologies, I've reposted it, so you guys should have it now. All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at the next session, whether you pop up at our Better Business Writing Workshop or our next ProWritingAid 101 for Business.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.